Could you tell us about your early experiences in mentoring? Did you have somebody to mentor you? And how did you first get involved in mentoring others?
Okay, well, that's two questions.
Well, go for the first one then.
To start with the first one, yes, I'm going back to the days when I first joined Wycliffe and started working with Bible translation, which is more than 50 years ago now. Mm-hmm. And in those days in the training system, mentoring wasn't really sort of labeled as talked about in the same way as it is now. Nevertheless, I think I can certainly identify people who have mentored me along the way. And I guess the first person who comes to my mind is John Bender Samuel, who was at that stage, Wycliffe in UK was just beginning. Wycliffe was underway in America, of course, and most Wycliffe members were Americans at that stage. And of course, Wycliffe work was mainly in South America, Mexico and Brazil and so on. But John had the vision for starting Wycliffe in the UK and was seeking to recruit people and build up a team. And I had the privilege of being part of the team that he was seeking to build up. As I look back and see what I really learnt from John, one major thing that comes to mind is that he had a vision for what could be done and breaking new ground, and had courage to go forward and try it and involve others in the process. So I think I could really appreciate John's contribution in that way. And of course, not only was he innovating in getting Wycliffe undergo in the UK, but also he was innovating in starting Wycliffe work in Bible translation in Africa for the first time. The first language teams went to Ghana, and then Nigeria was the second country. And I was privileged to be amongst the few first teams that went to Nigeria. So John was very much a guide along the way. And I can also say he was very influential also in helping me in the study program. He was very keen to get people well qualified early on. So I actually worked on my PhD before I went to the field. When I first went to Nigeria, of course, in those days you were assigned to a particular language. And I went and lived together with my colleague in the Mbembe language area. And the first job, of course, was to learn the language. And I can see, looking back, there was one particular lady. She was one of the two wives of the people who owned the person who owned the house where we were living. And she took me under her wing and was really determined I would learn the language. Even more than the person with whom I sort of worked officially on learning the language. And she would always come and, have some new thing to teach me each day. And I can remember her saying, try me out on something she taught me the day before. And if I couldn't remember, she said, I told you that yesterday, you should be remembering that. And I thought that was a nice combination of commitment to get to a certain goal, shared commitment, you both wanted it, but also, challenging the mentee a little bit too. You should be doing your best. You should be doing better than that. And of course, that's a balance thing. Mustn't push too hard. But I certainly owe her a lot in learning the language. And yes. That I can really appreciate mentoring from people, especially who have skills in the technical area, like Darcy Dryman and Dale Hoskrins and Chris Guthrie and John Macaulay, all of whom have been very patient. They're ready to help, ready to give help when you ask for help. I value mentors who are always ready to respond to requests.
Could you tell a little bit then how you first got involved in mentoring others?
during the 1970s, many translation projects were beginning in Nigeria. It realized how many languages survey had been going on, and the number of languages in Nigeria, which I think is now estimated at 650 or so. I may be a little out of date. It was clear that there needed to be a lot of work done. And clearly there would be a great need for trainers and consultants. We were seeing the potential for training Nigerians as translators, especially, seeing that translations are much better done by a speaker of the language, however well the other outsider learns the language. And but we was then getting the vision not only for training translators, but also for training trainers and consultants. So that was when I first got involved in mentoring others, because we were deliberately identifying people with potential to develop as consultants and setting up training programs for them. It made sense to train those already in Nigeria instead of bringing people for thousands of miles from overseas, although that was continued as well and was much needed. But started having training workshops for consultants, and it developed from there. I think the other thing I remember of that time and ongoing, how appreciative mentees are. If they know you're trying to help them, they're very appreciative, and that really helps in the relationship, you know, and you're learning from them as well, of course, at the same time. Recently, I saw the recognition, I think, in the seed company news thing that certain person had just been recognized as a full consultant. And I remembered that he'd been on one of the early training courses, and I wrote him a note to congratulate him. And he went back and said, you were the one who got me started. Thank you for getting me started. And I thought, well, that is a great privilege to be able to get people started. And will be many people in the process of training, and you learn from many different people, but we need to see the potential for getting people started.
Is there anything you want to say about learning from mentoring, from your different experiences you've described?
Learning, yes. Well, I think both the vision that the mentor had, because you learn to share that vision and then apply it in a new sphere. And their example, I think, is the major thing, that it's not so much always what they say, but what they do that you learn from.
So since you've returned to UK, you've continued to mentor consultants in training. Tell us, if you will, about how that's been working and what are the benefits that you see? Okay.
This has been in a more limited sphere, but I'm continually to check the language I mentioned earlier on, Mbembe, which was the first language I was assigned to, and lived in the area for 10 years and worked on the team with the translation of the New Testament. And I was then involved in wider training as well, but eventually the New Testament did get published. We finished it, that it published in 1985, but only later, after quite a different stretch of time, they wanted to get going with Old Testament, and not only with Old Testament, but also the three Mbembe languages or dialects. And when the first survey was done, it was touch and go whether they would be considered 3 different languages or 3 different dialects of the same language. Right. And it was decided initially that there would be 3 dialects, and therefore the translation was just, the New Testament was just in one of those languages. But then later they said the other 2, they wanted their own language, their own translation. So the new project in which I'm now involved, not so new now, but is Old Testament, for aiming for the full Bible in certainly the initial language, probably in all 3 eventually, and also a revision of the New Testament, because after a translation that's been published 30 years needs revision. And I think, you know, you've only got to see even projects like the NIV comes out with a revision when they've got a whole committee of scholarly experts.
Yeah.
And how much more in our situations. And so the revision of the New Testament is quite a major thing, as well as the work on Old Testament. And so where the mentoring comes in, it was such a very different situation in that when we started, it was working with people who had a very low level of English. In fact, the main person we worked with had finished primary school. But now we're working with people who have much more education. And in fact, we started the project by helping to sponsor the two projected main translators by going to TCNN, the Theological College for Northern Nigeria, learning some Hebrew and getting trained in biblical studies before becoming leading translators in the Mbembe projects. And those two particularly were, I don't know that they're officially labeled as consultants in training, but they certainly are consultants in training. And I'm deliberately trying to bring them along as far as I can so that they will, once the Mbembe is finished, they will be available to consult with other languages. They link them up with the EMDC, you know, online series of training courses, training workshops that's going on, and been very appreciative of that. That is mostly consultants. I don't see many translators on there, but they are profiting from that, and look for other opportunities for them to let them know when there is videos going or something that they could see and profit from. So really deliberately looking for opportunities to help them grow. And they're very appreciative of that.
Do you want to go to the next one that would follow on? What are the challenges of mentoring consultants in training at a distance?
Distance, yes, it would be. Obviously, it would be great advantage to have more personal contact. In this case, I already knew those involved because even until a couple of years ago, I was making regular visits and spending a few weeks at a time in the area to do checking on site. So I knew the people already, which helps. I think it would be more difficult, although not impossible, if you didn't already know those concerned. And I think another thing that's important is getting involved. I mean, you get to know their families and you can ask about their latest developments. You hear one of them particularly has just got a new baby who cries in the night. And, you know, the personal interaction is very important. Obviously you get more if you were on the site, but you can still profit from that even from a distance. Sending things helps too. If there's occasionally send them a good book that you feel would be helpful for them. And recently we were checking the story of Exodus and the story of the building of the tabernacle. And as I was able to find a very nice little illustrated booklet that I could send them, and you know, that's just looking out for opportunities to help them get additional helps besides what's already available to them online.
Great.
Okay.
We'll go back to the next one. What experiences have you had mentoring cross-culturally?
Relations and listening to people and being able to really try and judge their reactions and sense, you know, you learn from one unexpected interaction and you learn from another not to make the same. Maybe you realize you penetrated too deep or something, and try and learn from the process, learn in the process. I just think of, oh yes, I wrote in my notes here, Philippians chapter 2, from the experience of being united with Christ and how to interact with the Lord and then how to interact with each other. Is that chapter 2 of Philippians is a wonderful example of that. and then having the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who humbled himself and became a servant, taking on the likeness of man. So this cross culture, it's learning from Christ, learning from other examples.
Then finally, what counsel would you give to those that are considering entering into a mentoring relationship?
Learn to listen. Build a personal relationship. Being ready to see people's needs and build a relationship which is both giving and taking and profiting from that. The Lord gave all that he had, all that he was, and but he saw the results, and that's what we're encouraging us as we see the results, as we do see people growing, and as we grow ourselves in the process as well.
Yeah. Wonderful.
So if you have the opportunity to mentor someone, take it and learn from it too.